Oliver Stone, in my opinion, is the most knowledgeable and skilled at presenting this ancient Near East mythos in its modern conventional form. And I mean, he's really, really, really good. And even if he's not on our team all the way, maybe like halfway, where we get Conan, but we also get this terrible Wall Street. But nobody else, in my opinion, has a more coherent way of presenting these tales in cinematic form, so I think there's something to learn from that. I imagine he thinks of himself as this mercurial or Homeric figure who's like devil's advocate at the bar, content overhearing your convo, but also this genius who can bring us down the voice of God in a nice, seemingly way with no loose strings and all the complexities and meaning of the original message. He's Job's best scribe, and it's through his movie Wall Street that I think it's possible to make this analysis, where independent of it, it would require some more hand-wringing. In his film Wall Street, Stone opposes the character Bud Fox with Gordon Gekko, where the two journey through what we can imagine a corporate takeover, where Gordon is approached by an unknown Bud Fox, they enter into a negotiation, and then their relationship is blown up, and Bud Fox ends up with ownership of Blue Star Airlines. And we can compare the movie Wall Street and the idea of a hostile corporate takeover, and more generally the use of nepotism within Wall Street to control our economy, to the myth of Joseph and Bellerophon from the Hebrew and Greek myths respectively, where most famously it's known through Homer's Iliad and the famous Glaucan Exchange, where the Trojan hero Glaucus seemingly gets the shorthand of the deal with the Greek Diomedes. But we need to realize things are not always what they seem, and there's always two sides to a story, and myth is no different. So by analyzing the Hebrew myth with the Greek mythos, we can understand and ultimately better conclude what the artist is trying to tell us. And in a paradoxical, or maybe better yet, slick way, Homer explains how the Bronze Age exchange of metals, cattle, and grain resemble the same operating principle as Wall Street today of patrilineal control of mercantile and economic markets. So let's dive right into it. In Book 6 of Homer's Iliad, we have, "Henceforth, however, I, who I here is Glaucus, must be your host in Middle Argos, and you, who you is Diomedes, mine in Lycia. If I should ever go there, let us avoid one another's spears, even during a general engagement. There are many noble Trojans and allies whom I can kill. If I overtake them and heaven delivers them into my hand, so again with yourself. There are many Achaeans whose lives you may take if you can. We two, then, will exchange armor, that all present may know of the old ties that subsist between us." With these words they sprang from their chariots, grasped one another's hands, and plighted friendship. But the son of Saturn made Glaucus take leave of his wits, for he exchanged golden armor for bronze, the worth of 100 head of cattle for the worth of 9. And we can imagine this passage as in Wall Street, where Gordon has found out about Larry Wildman's desire to buy the company Anacott Steel before he can go public, and thus beforehand bought a large amount of shares, right? And he stands to make a fortune once news hits Wall Street the following day. Before the morning bell, Larry visits Gordon at his house, and they have a standoff before making a deal. And what is an amazing scene, Oliver Stone's depiction of the Glaucan Exchange. There's an obvious tension at the house, and Gordon even says, "I don't like standoffs." And this is where watching the movie is important. We understand how Wall Street operates in backdoor deals today, and we can't be naive to think it was different in the past. Like, Glaucus is portrayed to be naive, but he isn't, and the conversation between him and Diomedes is probably like Gordon's and Larry's, not in the battlefield, but in some palace in Middle Argos, like Homer says, where, like Glaucus and Diomedes exchanging armor, it's Gordon handing Larry his firearm to look at before they get to business, and Larry says he can break Gordon in half, buy him 6 times over, where this seemingly more well-off guy cuts this backroom deal with the actual benefactor of the transaction, Gordon. And in this scene, Larry Wildman is Diomedes, which in Greek means 2 middles, which if you have 2 middles, it means you've dissected something in half, like Larry who says, "I'll break you in 2, mate," to Gordon. And it's Diomedes who's said to get golden armor worth 100 cattle for the bronze armor worth 9, which resembles this boast of 6 to 1 in worth. And we can understand Gordon in this scene as Glaucus, which means glimmering, but also bluish green, which we can imagine as this rusted over bronze armor or coinage, or even cast today as green with a hint of blue. And more importantly, we can literally translate this phrase Glaucan Exchange to the modern day metals exchange, this paradox as a way of hiding the true identity of our money in plain sight, like this Glaucan Exchange, or we can imagine Glaucan meaning glimmering like metal or coinage, so metal exchange. And even more so today, we know people's names have color prefixes like black stone, sparkle, gold, and we associate them with control of our economy. Moving further, Larry calls Gordon a 2-bit pirate, green mailer, which again, 2-bit or Diomedes, and green mailer, which we can understand as both this green money, but also this rusted bronze armor or coinage, where the mail can be imagined as metal armor. Also, everyone in the Trojan War could be considered a pirate, and it's more likely they were identified as such, these raiders and warriors who come and plunder your city from their ships. Moreover, the company's name is Anacott Steel, where in the Iliad the whole deal centers around metals and their exchange rate in cattle, like this Bronze Age Wall Street. And I think Oliver Stone has some fun tongue-in-cheek and throws people off the scent with this Sun Tzu crap, right? And it's better to look elsewhere like Homer. Anyways, to be clear, I think it's best to understand this concept of the Glaucan Exchange as explained by Homer as its own standalone, independent, literary device that shows up in Stone's movie more than once. And Gordon, of course, even falls prey to it with Bud Fox in the end, resulting in Bud getting control of Blue Star Airlines. So Blue Star Airline is where Bud's father Carl works, and it's through Bud's connection to Blue Star through his dad that he gets Gordon's attention in the first place. And in the Iliad, this is how we get to know the Glaucan Exchange. Before any deal is made where Glaucus and Diomedes are opposite in this field of battle, they first connect through their lineage, more specifically their fathers and grandfathers. And Homer, of course, uses these patronymic epithets to name people with Glaucus, son of Hippolochus, and Diomedes, son of Tydeus. And when Diomedes asks Glaucus who you are, Homer writes the response. Then Glaucus, son of Hippolochus, and the son of Tydeus went into the open space between the hosts to fight in single combat. When they were close up to one another, Diomed of the loud war cry was first to speak. Who, my good sir, said he, who are you among men? I have never seen you in battle until now. And the son of Hippolochus answered, Son of Tydeus, why ask me of my lineage? Glaucus asked in what seems a naive, confused way, Why ask me of my lineage? But it's the whole moral of the story, this club that Wall Street is, and it's explained through this Hebrew metaphor of Jacob and Joseph reuniting, this father-son relationship hiding in plain sight. And likewise, the relationship of Bud and Carl, where at the end of the day they are together and happy, and Blue Star Airlines is in control of this Bud Fox or Joseph figure. And this question of who you are, and more specifically who your father is, or maybe even better yet, hiding who your father is until this strategic moment of a deal. In addition to this idea of currency exchange revolving around patrimonial lineage, plays out with both Bud and his father through his acquisition of Blue Star from Gordon, but also Gordon when he tells Bud Fox about his control of the market, as well as the backstory on his dad. Once again, we can view this as a Glaucan exchange, where right before Gordon gets into the limo, there's a thunder crash from Jove, where in the Iliad it's Jupiter, the lightning bearer, who dims Glaucus of his wits. And here Bud has kind of deceived Gordon by playing dumb and obtaining the key information, and that's who your father on the board is, right? And who's your father matters in this social club. And Bud Fox or Joseph might seem like he gets the lesser of the deal like Glaucus, but he ends up bettering Gordon in the end, and it's Gordon in a moment of cloudiness, chaos, and storminess that is deceived by the young and up-and-coming prince by his projected naivety. And Gordon we can associate as this Aryan figure, or this wasp, old class of Wall Street, this idea of a fundamental libertarian where greed is good and the market most rational. And his name Gordon means a clan or a place in Scotland. And so he's not quite a blue-blooded wasp, and he has this chip on his shoulder which drives him to the top. And once again, this libertarian idea of meritocracy in the market, where Gordon says lunch is for wimps, but Gordon knows about Glaucus, or the myth of money, and it's Jove who has deceived him, right? Or better yet, the clouds have come and shrouded the sun, and it's told in this sly Glaucan way of the father Jove covering his son. And moreover, we can relate Gordon to Potiphar, or better yet, this Pharaoh figure, which if we look up the translation, Potiphar means whom Ra gave, where Ra is the Egyptian sun god, who we can understand through the Greek Apollo. And Gordon, we know, loves the sun, where that one famous scene where he describes it as never being more beautiful. And we can imagine this as some kind of solstice or maximum, where the Apollonian will be dimmed by the clouds, that we know from Homer when he says that Jove makes Glaucus dim-witted. Furthermore, Gordon uses Bud Fox to obtain information secretly for him as a way to affect the market, and interpreting this through Genesis and the character of Joseph, we can make this obvious connection to the shamanistic ability of Joseph to read and interpret dreams and have visions as Bud Fox collecting information for Gordon. And when Joseph goes to Egypt, he uses the ability to interpret dreams to rise in the hierarchy of Egyptians and their society in general, becoming second only to Pharaoh. And he interprets this one dream where there will be a great abundance for a period of time, followed by a drought. And through this forehand knowledge, he hoards all this grain, right? And when the famine comes, he uses his store of grain to sell back to the Egyptians, and thus gain wealth and land as a result. And this seasonal, cyclic, and predictable nature of the market is described by Homer. Men come and go as leaves year by year upon the trees. Those of autumn the wind sheds upon the ground. But when spring returns, the forest buds forth with fresh vines. Even so is it with the generations of mankind. The new spring up as the old are passing away. If then you would learn my descent, it is one that is well known to many. Relating Homer to Wall Street, the bud that grows fresh from the vines are the dreams or bits of insider information the namesake character Bud Fox collects for Gordon. Moreover, it's Homer ending with the interesting line, "If then you would learn my descent, it is one that is well known to many." That is, once again, the moral of the story, where Bud Fox, like Joseph, has reunited with his father, with Bud becoming estranged, but reconciling with his acquisition of Blue Star, and Joseph with Jacob's return to Egypt and his unveiling of his identity. And his identity being a secret is similar to Homer in different ways, where the Iliad, the Glaucan Exchange, is told through this reminiscent story of two soldiers' grandfathers, where Joseph's is about his deception and withholding of his identity as a way to bring his father Jacob to Egypt and reunite. And in the end of the movie, you have once again this Glaucan Exchange, where the two meet in a rainy field with Gordon seemingly getting the better, punching and beating up Bud, but it's Bud Fox, who we find in the last scene, happy, finally with his dad in the car. And we can understand Carl, his father, as Jacob. And once again, we have the stormy, cloudy weather, which we can understand through the dimming motif, where this Glaucus, who is deceived by Jove, this storm god, and we also know Glaucus as this play-on name, where it means both glimmer and this bluish green, or this rusting or dimming of the metal. And going further, this metaphor of feast and famine, where the sun being blocked will not grow crops, but also this scam, where at first it's gleaming gold, and it proves false as it turns to this rusty bronze. This Glaucan Exchange is a scam, and they do it in the back room through a Patrilineal control. And today we know these people prey on us and cloud our judgment to provoke us into buying these hoards of grain or shares that these Joseph figures have acquired at the cheap and wish to unload at high prices, driven by fear behind a supposed drought or forehand knowledge that they have.